Question 61. A property that is transferred between parents and their children is exempt from A. Property taxes for a year after the date of sale. B. Reassessment of its property value for tax purposes. C. Being taxed on its objective value. D. Being taxed on its subjective value. Correct answer is B. Reassessment of its property value for tax purposes. In many jurisdictions, transfers of real property between parents and children are exempt from reassessment for property tax purposes. This means that the property's assessed value, used to calculate property taxes, will not be increased simply because of the transfer. This exemption helps families pass property down without a sudden increase in property taxes. However, this exemption often has limitations and specific requirements, and it's not universal. It's always best to check local laws and regulations for the most accurate information. Question 62. When a deceased person's real property under the jurisdiction of the probate court is sold through a real estate broker, the amount of the broker's commission is determined by the A. Deceased's closest relative, B. Estate administrator, C. The probate court, D. Real estate commissioner. Correct answer is C. The probate court. When real property within an estate is sold through probate, the court overseeing the probate process determines the broker's commission. It's not set by the deceased's relatives, the estate administrator alone, or the real estate commissioner. The court approves the sale and the commission to ensure fairness and protect the interests of the estate's beneficiaries. If the broker's commission is not ordered by the court at the confirmation hearing for the property sale, the broker may request it in writing, and the court may modify the order to award a commission. Question 63. A broker's acceptance of a buyer's deposit on behalf of the owner is based on the terms usually included in the A. Listing agreement, B. Title report, C. Deed of sale, D. MLS. Correct answer is A. Listing agreement. The listing agreement between the seller, owner, and the broker typically outlines the terms under which the broker is authorized to accept deposits from potential buyers. It specifies how much of a deposit is acceptable, how it should be held, and under what conditions it can be returned or forfeited. The listing agreement establishes the agency relationship and defines the scope of the broker's authority. Question 64. A broker wishing to legally enforce his right to a commission for procuring a 6-month rental agreement must A. Have a special license for being a rental broker. B. Have a written agreement signed by the property owner. C. Be able to prove he had an oral agreement with the property owner. D. There are no commissions for procuring rental agreements, only for outright sales. Correct answer is C. Be able to prove he had an oral agreement with the property owner. Oral agreements for services related to real estate, including procuring a rental agreement less than 1 year, can be enforceable in many jurisdictions. The key is that the agreement must be able to be performed within 1 year to avoid the statute of frauds requirement for a written contract. Since a 6-month rental agreement falls within that time frame, an oral agreement, if provable, could be sufficient. Question 65. The person who is primarily responsible for disclosure to a buyer of the existence of a Mello-Roos tax assessment on a piece of real estate would be A. The seller, B. The buyer, C. An attorney, D. The escrow agent. Correct answer is A. The seller. While other parties, like the real estate agent, might also have a duty to disclose, the primary responsibility for disclosing the existence of a Mello-Roos tax assessment falls on the seller. The seller is the one who is aware of the assessment and has the legal obligation to inform the buyer of this material fact. Real estate disclosure laws typically require sellers to disclose known material facts about the property, and Mello-Roos assessments are considered a material fact. Mello-Roos is a special tax in California used to fund local infrastructure, like schools and roads. It's added to property tax bills in designated districts and must be disclosed to buyers. These taxes are not permanent and usually last until related bonds are paid off. Question 66. Cousin Jim and Cousin Vinny own title to a property as joint tenants. Jim gets married and deeds half his interest to his new spouse, Gloria. Consequently, Gloria now has title to the property as A. Anne. A. Servient tenant, B. Separate property holder, C. Tenant in common, D. Tenant in fee simple. Correct answer is C. Tenant in common. When Jim, a joint tenant, conveyed half of his interest to Gloria, it severed the joint tenancy with respect to that portion. Joint tenancy requires the 4 unities: TTIP, time, title, interest, and possession. When Jim transferred his interest to Gloria, the unity of title and possibly time were broken. Gloria now owns that half interest as a tenant in common with Vinny. Vinny remains a joint tenant with respect to the other half of the property, his original share, but as between Vinny and Gloria, they are tenants in common. Joint tenancy features equal ownership shares and a right of survivorship, meaning a deceased owner's share goes to the surviving owners. Tenancy in common allows for unequal shares and no automatic right of survivorship. A deceased owner's share goes to their heirs. Joint tenancy requires 4 unities: possession, interest, title, and time, while tenancy in common only requires unity of possession. Question 67. Which of these principles is used as the basis for the market data method of appraisal? A. Value, B. Utility, C. Substitution, D. Conformity. Correct answer is C. Substitution. The principle of substitution states that a buyer will pay no more for a property than they would pay for an equivalent substitute. The market data approach, also known as the sales comparison approach, relies directly on this principle. Appraisers find recent sales of comparable properties and adjust them for differences to estimate the value of the subject property, essentially saying, a buyer would substitute this comparable property for the subject property if the price were right. Question 68. Sometimes included in a security instrument, the clause stating that the instrument will have secondary priority against another mortgage to be taken in the future is called A. Secondary clause, B. Subordination clause, C. Recording clause, D. Lien position clause. Correct answer is B. Subordination clause. Most subordination clauses are found in mortgage and trust deeds, securing purchase loans for unimproved land when the borrower plans to later obtain a construction loan. Lien priority is normally established by the recording date, but when a subordination clause is included in the earlier land loan, it means the later construction loan can take the first lien position. Question 69. A prospective buyer is being shown a property where someone died 5 years prior. If that death is known to the broker showing the property, the broker, A. must disclose the death to the buyer. B. is not legally required to disclose the death to the buyer. C. if the cause of death was AIDS, it need not be disclosed. Any other cause of death, and it must be disclosed. D. The property cannot be sold until at least 7 years have elapsed since a death at the property. Correct answer is B. is not legally required to disclose the death to the buyer. If someone has died on a property more than 3 years previously, it need not be disclosed to the buyer, whatever the cause of death. However, if a prospective buyer has asked about the death and the seller, or his agent has intentionally lied about it, it will be considered a fraudulent misrepresentation. Question 70. Back-end debt describes the borrower's debt obligations for A. Mortgage payments only, B. All monthly debt payments combined, C. Escrow payments before the property sale closes, D. Agency fees. Correct answer is B. All monthly debt payments combined. Back-end debt, also called the debt-to-income ratio or DTI, refers to the total amount of a borrower's monthly debt payments, including housing costs, mortgage, property taxes, insurance, and other obligations, car loans, student loans, credit card minimums, divided by their gross monthly income. It's a key factor lenders consider when evaluating a borrower's creditworthiness.